guys, I'm going to show you guys how to can and make pickles today. You're going to use a water bath canner, which you have right here. If you don't have one, you can use a pot probably. You just have to have some kind of tray or something in the bottom of the pot itself to keep the glass off the burner itself, off the bottom of the pot or whatever you're using. But if you use a water bath canner for high acidic foods, you would use a pressure canning system for low acidic foods like meat, chili, soup, stuff like that. Well, we're going to do water bath canning and we're going to do pickles. We already did some last week and I didn't have enough cucumbers, so we put the rest of the brine that we made in a jar and put it in the fridge for the past week. We're going to get this out. We're going to put it in a pot. You want it in a non-reactive metal pot, so like stainless would be good. You don't want it in aluminum. You can get like a metallic taste in the brine, which you don't want. So we're going to dump this in a stainless pot and bring it up to a simmer probably, or a quick boil, and immediately take it away from the heat. Prior to doing that, we're going to put our jars, we only need 3 jars today to finish our recipe. It calls for 7. These are quart jars. The recipe we're using is just a like a pre-packaged recipe. It's our first time canning. The next time we do it, we're going to make our own brine from scratch, but it worked out pretty good. Anyhow, these are quart jars. The recipe calls for 7 quart jars, and that's how many fits in a standard water bath canner. Quart jars, every recipe is different, so you have to go pretty strict on what the recipe calls for. Quart jars for pickles, in this recipe specifically, is 15 minutes of boiling once you get it all prepped and ready. But we're going to go ahead and bring this pot to a boil with all the jars in there, with the lids off and the rings off. We're just going to set them in the water, bring them up to a boil. To sanitize them, they've already been cleaned. You don't really need to sanitize, but we just want to get the glass jars up to temperature. So that way when you add the brine and the pickles and you put them down into the boiling water for the 15-minute time, you're not taking a risk of breaking the glass or anything from going from cold to hot. But we're going to go ahead and get these heated up in the pot, and we're going to get the brine to a boil, and then we'll be back. Alright, while we're bringing this up to temperature, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what we're going to use. We're also going to throw the lids and rings in to the water. Putting these rings in the warm water, it lets that seal become more malleable, a little bit softer, it gets a better seal. Put all them in there. And I'm going to go over the tools we're going to use to get this job done. We're going to want a sharp knife for your cucumbers, obviously. This here is just a magnet to pull the lids out of the water. This here is the jar lifter. Tongs, you can grab the jars and pull them out. Here you have just like a spatula, but it has a ruler on the one end, so you can check your headspace in the jars. You have to have a certain headspace for every recipe. In that headspace meaning the room you have from the contents of the jar, liquid and solids included. This recipe, we're going to have a 1/2 inch headspace. So from the very top of the rim down to where you hit the liquid and or contents, you want to have a 1/2 inch for this recipe. The other thing is a wide mouth funnel for helping you pour the brine in usually. This helps for other recipes, but pickles doesn't really help as much for putting the cucumbers in. Wide mouth lids, if you need new lids, they recommend you put new lids on every time you can. You can definitely reuse them, I would say. I mean, you're not supposed to, but there's no issue as long as you check them, prior to. And if they have a good seal at the end of the job, everything's fine. We have a little extra dill weed we might add. Might add some cloves, garlic cloves, maybe onion, and I was thinking about putting some jalapeno in one jar. I'm not sure yet. But anyhow, this is the recipe we use. This is the zesty bread and butter pickle one. We use just the regular dill. I was just using this for a reference. And this is like a wrench for your jar lids, but you're only going to just fingertip tighten these before you go ahead and water bath can them and bring them to a boil. So I guess this will help you open the jars, but you don't want to cinch them down hard with this or anything. And all of this green coated stuff here all came in this box from Rural King actually, and so did our rack that I'll show you guys later. The rack that the jars are sitting on inside, that all came from Rural King. The water bath pot itself is really wide, and I didn't have a pot to fit. You can get a water bath canner for probably 20 bucks at Rural King too, probably, but my neighbor hooked me up with this, so I'm very grateful for that. And other than that, we're going to go ahead and get the brine on and get that heating up, and then we'll be back. Alright, I'm just going to prepare these cucumbers to go in the jars. Like I said, we're going to need a 1/2 inch headspace. So if you come in here, you can see right here's a 1/2 inch on the marker. We're going to go down a 1/2 inch, which is just about at the bottom, just below this start of this rim there. So when I checked the depth, I'm going to go ahead and cut my cucumbers to the T on granite ware. So we're going to cut those to length. Now all the cucumbers, you're going to take the ends off of all of them, and then you're going to go from there. And then we're going to see how long we need. And then those leftovers we'll use for slices instead of spears. So we'll get those all to length real quick. All these leftovers we're just going to slice up and use those to fill, the last jar if we have to, or a couple, if there's any voids that we can get some in there. You don't want to pack them too tight, but as soon as I get these sliced, we'll put some ice on them. Alright, we're just packing these jars now. Pull the cucumbers out of the ice, drain them, and we're going to dump these in here. Like I said, you don't want to pack them too tight, but you don't want to waste a lot of room either. So, and I think we got extra cucumbers, so we might try to get them a little bit tighter. Alright, so now we're going to add our brine, again leaving a 1/2 inch headspace. Okay, now we're going to take a clean paper towel, it's fine. Some people add a little bit of white vinegar to it, and wipe this rim really clean before we go ahead and set our lids on and then tighten them down. Alright, we're just going to add a little bit of onion, garlic, and some dill weed. We would have used fresh, but coronavirus, didn't feel like going out and getting any. I'm just going to put a little bit in there. clove, cut in half. That's probably all we're going to fit because we didn't put that in sooner. Now we're going to use this spatula and check for any air bubbles down in there. So we're going to just stick this down in around the outside of the jar usually. I got them kind of tight. And make sure there's no air bubbles. You don't want any air bubbles. Okay, now we're going to take a rag and make sure these tops of the jars are very clean so it gets a really good seal. We pulled these out with the magnet tool. I'm going to set them on. And like I said, we're just going to fingertip tighten these. Make sure they're all nice and square. There's the magnet that came off again. The second time I glued it. It does not like boiling water. I don't know what they were thinking. Now we're going to take our tongs again, set these down in our water. I tilt them usually because they have that concave hole in the bottom. I try to get the air bubble out of there. I don't know if it matters or not, but I'd rather they didn't shatter in here. Last one before it goes in. Now we're going to turn the heat up. So we let that come to a boil. And as soon as it does, we set a 15-minute timer for this recipe. And then we're going to pull them out after 15 minutes. You're going to wait 5 minutes. Turn the heat off and wait 5 minutes. And then you can pull the jars out, set them on a towel on the counter. And I usually, anywhere from 12 to 24 hours, just let them sit there untouched. Don't shake them around or pick them up and look at them or anything. Let those seals, let it cool, and those seals will suck down. And you'll actually hear them pop. And then tomorrow, we'll go back and check and make sure the seals are good. Alright, we waited 5 minutes after we turned the heat off and removed them from the heat. I'm going to go ahead and pull them. And set it down. Alright, now those are going to sit there, and you can see the bubbles coming up. Get real close. We're going to let this sit for 12 to 24 hours, and we'll check back with you tomorrow. Alright guys, we're back here the next day. We have 2 jars from last week's batch. I just want to show you guys that, we did do some slices instead of just spears. These are done. We took the rings off, and you're going to wipe the jars down because sometimes you'll get some liquid come out of the jars through the seal. Just wipe them clean. I store them without the rings on because you can actually get a false seal or damage the seal by tightening those down on. So I just store them like this. I mean, you can see that you can even lift them by the just the caps themselves. But what you want to do the next day is just check for a good seal. Now the tops should be concave a little bit. They should be dented down, and you shouldn't be able to push them at all. Like if you push them, normally if they were a popped seal like this one, I don't know if you guys can hear that. These, you won't get any of that, you know what I mean? They're dented down in. So we got a good seal on all of these. But I got my taste testers here, so we're going to go ahead and try one real quick out of this batch from last week. Same recipe, like I said earlier in the video. I just stored the rest of the brine that we had left over in a jar itself and put it in the fridge for a week or so. And let's go ahead and try one.
Oh, y'all better do it in unison. Okay.
Pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty crunchy. I didn't expect them to be as crunchy, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are super good. I think Squid will take another.
Yeah. Alright guys, I appreciate you guys watching and hanging in there this long. I know it's been a long video, but I try to be as thorough as needed to get these done. If you try this recipe or whatever, let me know. I will post a homemade recipe that I'm going to do next time. And probably after we get some cucumbers out of the garden, actually. And if you like the video, like and subscribe. I appreciate it. It helps a lot. And I'll see you in the next one. I kind of wanted to taste them first anyhow, before I started handing them out. It tasted like dog poop. I wasn't going to. I just still ate them, but